How to keep your houseplants alive. My name is Clarissa. I'll be walking you through everything you need to know to keep your houseplants alive. Over the last few years, I've really gained a love for my houseplants, and I've really been able to keep them alive to the point where I've been able to propagate, I've been able to separate them and make new plants. And that's crazy to me because just a few years ago, I was the same person who was killing cacti, the little cactuses you get from Lowe's that are basically unkillable. So I'm going to take you through basically everything you're going to need to know to gain a good green thumb. Number one is understanding your space. Where is it that you are thinking of putting your houseplants? Are you putting them in a windowsill, a shelf, maybe your bathroom? Are these ideal places for plants? Now, don't get me wrong, certain plants can thrive in certain areas, so that's kind of what we're going to get into next. You should consider the lighting in those locations. If there's a window nearby, which way does it face? North, south, east, west? And how much light are they going to get in that location per day? There are three main types of light that you want to consider. First up, we're going to think of high light areas. These are usually south-facing windows, wherever the sun directly shines through the window. So if it's evening and the sun is going down, can you see the sun directly through that window? That is a really good indicator that this is going to be a high light area. Next is medium light. Medium light is bright indirect sunlight and sometimes filtered sunlight. So think about windows where the sun doesn't directly shine through, but you still get a lot of daylight out of those windows. And next we have low light. That means that they might get some sunlight. Maybe they're in a room where there's going to be some sun coming through the windows, but really they will be far away from any light source. Another thing you have to think about is humidity. Take your heating and cooling into account. For example, in the winter, if you're using a heating source, that takes a lot of humidity out of the air. So to compensate for this, you should be misting your plants at least once a week. Maybe you live in a warmer, higher humidity area. Consider if and when you do open your windows. That will really help you keep tabs on how much humidity your plants are used to getting. And it's really important that you keep that steady. You have to remember that plants do get used to their outside elements. So now that we're bringing them inside, you really need to keep tabs on which plants need higher humidity and which ones can go without. Watering, one of the most important things when it comes to taking care of your plants. So we talked about lighting, and honestly, lighting will affect how much you will be watering your plants, in addition to what kind of plant it is, of course. Overall, a good rule of thumb is to check the plant yourself. The number one newbie mistake that I see aspiring plant people do is overwater their plants. And of course, it makes sense. We have pets, we ourselves as humans, we need nourishment every single day. We need water every single day to stay alive. And that's just not the case for a lot of plants, especially house plants. Be sure to water it, allow the plant to drink the water, and then monitor it every single day when you're first starting out. This will help you really get to understand your plant. How fast does it drink the water? When the soil feels dry and fluffy again, that's when you know it's safe to water the plant again. But if I just stick my finger in the plant, I can feel that it's still a little bit damp. So I'm going to give it another day or two before I water this plant. If you overwater and constantly keep the soil wet, it can actually drown the root and cause something called root rot. And that's when the roots actually just start to rot. In my opinion, it's better to underwater your plant than overwater your plant. Over time, you can start to take a mental note of how often a lot of these plants need to be watered. Again, you could just check the soil yourself. Our next really important part is choosing your plants. Many plants in both the indoor and outdoor sections of Home Depot and Lowe's actually have little tags on the plants which will tell you if they're high, medium, or low light. So that is extremely helpful. These are my best recommendations for houseplants, but keep in mind that you should always monitor any plant that you get, no matter what I'm recommending here. Number one is snake plants. In my opinion, they're great for all types of light that you're going to get. I do think that they need to be put in the sun every now and then because they do need to make food for themselves, but overall they're really resilient and honestly really hard to kill. Next is pothos. This is another one where I will tell you that they are great in all light. There's so many different variations of pothos, and I think that's why people really love them. They're also extremely easy to propagate. I think once you really get the hang of pothos, it starts to become really fun and you can start taking little clips off of them. You can really see the leaves grow, and I think they're just a really fun beginner plant to start with because you can really see the growth. Some highlight plants that I would recommend are any type of palm tree. Those you really have to watch because they take in a lot of light, which means they're going to need a lot of water. Another great one are herbs. If you have a windowsill and in your kitchen, that is just amazing. I would say go ahead and plant your cilantro, plant your basil, plant your green onions. It's the most fun thing to do because then you could just pick off and use them. Some great medium light plants are the peace lilies, the monsteras, and the alocasia plants. My number one recommendation for a starter plant is a peace lily. I have one that is almost 3 years old in my living room, and she is super dramatic. All peace lilies are. Whenever they need water, even the slightest bit of water, they're gonna wilt like crazy. So they're really fun to like watch them wilt, water them, and then in a few hours you come back and it's all just, they're just right side up like nothing ever happened. So they're really fun. If they get enough light, come springtime and summertime, they start to sprout little, just like little white flowers, and they're really cute. I also recently got an alocasia plant. This plant was a happy surprise because I had never had one of these before. I didn't do much research beforehand, and I just decided to take a chance on it. It has been great. It doesn't need too much light. They're really pretty and they grow really big, and I've loved having it as a house plant. I just got well, I didn't just get this plant, but I just took this from my kitchen right now. It says it's called a white Anne, but its full name is Fittonia argyronura. This plant has been really fun. I have since tried to cut clippings of it because I like it so much. I think I'm gonna buy another one. This one is also dramatic. I love the dramatic plants, and with only a little bit of sunlight, it grows a lot. Plants I do not recommend when first starting out, and this is really important. Any plant that costs more than $15. Usually these are medium or large plants, and I just don't think that those are very suitable for beginner plant people. They are what I like to call high stakes plants, and there's a reason why they're more expensive. Probably not only because they're larger plants, but because they're probably harder to care for. In Home Depot and Lowe's, they have really small starter plants, and as you can see, mine still has a label on it. This one was $5.48, so just a little over $5. This is very low stakes for a beginner. Pick out one of the plants that you like, and if it does die, you're not going to feel too bad. Start off with a small plant that you can monitor the health, growth, and then repot later. There are so many plants where I have had that started off this size and they grew double and triple after I repotted them. So after they grow, it's kind of like getting free plants. These next plants might be really surprising because they are marketed as beginner plants, but I will say don't do it. Number one, we have an aloe vera plant, and in my experience, they are really finicky. If you have the idea in your head that you're gonna cut from an aloe vera plant, I absolutely think it's possible. I know that people do it, but I think for a beginner, it's just not a suitable plant because things can go south very quickly with this plant. They tend to get mushy. It's always hard to tell how much to water them, and they're just so finicky. So I'd stay away from the aloe vera plants. Next, we have cacti. Similarly to the aloe, for me, it was so hard for me to figure out how much I should be watering them. Sometimes I felt like I was overwatering them. Sometimes I felt like I was underwatering them, and then they'd shrivel up. I would say maybe stay away from cacti. I think cacti can really go either way. Next are the fiddle leaf figs. Those are marketed so hard on Pinterest, so hard on Instagram, and they look so beautiful. They grow to be such beautiful trees. A lot of people have them indoors, but the truth is that they are a little difficult to care for, and they do tend to be very expensive. So I would not start out with a fiddle leaf fig. And last is any type of orchid. Don't get an orchid. They only flower once a year. They are so hard to care for and so easy to kill. Once the flower falls off, a lot of people just assume that they've killed their orchid, and that is not the truth. It takes a lot of patience. They are so beautiful, but you have to know that for most of the year, they're not going to have a flower on them. So if you're okay with that, I'd say go ahead and get one. So caring for your plants beyond watering them. I personally do homemade fertilizer with a banana peel and water. You just put both in a container and let it sit overnight or for a full 24 hours. And then you dilute the banana fertilizer when you go and water your plants, and it gives a lot of great nutrients to your plants. And I've personally seen a lot of great growth and positive effects on my plants from doing this. Next is if you start to notice gnats growing out of your plant's soil, just sprinkle a little cinnamon or just shake a little cinnamon on the top layer of the soil, and that will get rid of them. If you are noticing that your plants need more light, sometimes it's winter time and sometimes it rains for a whole week straight, I would recommend recommend getting a grow light. There are lots of different kinds of grow lights. I have ones that have these LED strip looking things, and I can kind of maneuver where I want them to go. And then there are also bulbs. So you could put bulbs in your lamps or your overhead lights if you want, and it'll mimic natural sunlight. For mine, I'll usually gather a lot of my plants that don't see a lot of light often, and I'll put them all on the floor, set the grow light to a timer of maybe like 3 hours a day for 5 days straight. Then those plants will have sunlight that they have been missing, and I'll just put them right back where they used to be. If you're gonna repot your plant, make sure to watch a specific video on whatever plant you're gonna repot. Sometimes you don't even need to repot your plants. Sometimes the roots just need a little trim. Other important things are what's the best next size you should go to for potting this plant, and what kind of soil should you be using. Lastly, this isn't super beginner friendly, but there will come times where you have to prune your plants. Sometimes you will see a yellow leaf. Maybe your plant looks really overgrown. You are able to cut off parts of your plant, and it's called pruning. It's usually done in the early spring. For beginners, I'd really just say if there are any leaves on your plant that if you just brush them with your hand, they fall right off, they were supposed to be gone anyway. So I think for a beginner, that's really good pruning advice. Don't take scissors to a plant that's starting to grow a lot. Make sure you do your research before you prune anything off your plants. And I know this is a video for houseplants primarily, but let's go out to my balcony. Any plant that is on my property, I consider it a plant of my house. So that includes any balcony plants. For anyone watching this video wanting to develop their green thumb, my best advice is to go outside, touch some grass, and plant some seeds. If you really want to be able to grow things, you have to start somewhere. Gardening and keeping plants alive is a science, and I think a lot of times we look for a formula to execute, and we just want to leave it at that. Don't be afraid to grow random things like green onions from the grocery store, some leftover pepper seeds, some wildflowers, anything, just try it. Growing things isn't going to be perfect, but I guarantee that it's going to make you feel really good when you do finally get the hang of it. I really hope this video was helpful in starting to develop your green thumb. Please leave a comment below or come back to the video after some time if this actually did help you, because I wish I watched a video like this when I first started with my houseplants. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe. I'm trying to bring a lot more everyday living videos onto this channel, and I feel like this is just the start of that. So with that, I thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.